This is #Gen Z, a podcast that explores Generation Z, who they are, how they're different from other generations, while also being an incredible blend of those who came before them. And I'm your host, Meghan Grace. Let's be real, the world kind of feels heavy and dark, and sometimes the only thing we can do to feel better is laugh. Not to make light of the hardships or the tragedies, but there is something actually healing about a laugh. And not just anecdotally, there's actually some science to it. Healthline reported that laughter can boost immunity, relieve physical tension in the body, it reduces stress and anxiety, enhances cognitive function, and of course, it improves our mood. With all these positive benefits, it's definitely worthwhile for us to explore how Gen Z is using comedy and creative outlets to make sense of life, the good, the messy, and even the really hard parts. We're going to talk about grief, uncertainty, burnout, but also about laughter, joy, and resilience. Because in this generation, the line between critique and comedy can be a survival tool. And recent studies are showing us just how much humor is not just a nice to have for young people, but essential. Research from Utah Tech University and Abilene Christian University, among others, indicates that 40+% of Gen Z report diagnosis of symptoms of mental health challenges. In that context, memes, dark humor, absurdity, these are even more than just entertainment. They often act as a coping mechanism. Humor helps Gen Z reframe pain, connect with others, and even when we're feeling overwhelmed. Leah Kramer is our guest today. So if you've heard the words edited by Leah Kramer at the end of the show, that's her voice that you don't always get to hear. But today you will. Leah is a Gen Z creative based in Brooklyn, but she's originally from Buffalo, New York. She works in educational advocacy, runs peer grief groups, performs comedy, and hosts and produces shows, and she edits podcasts. You name it, she really is a multi-hyphenate. Her creative work is a side hustle, but it's also a way of bringing joy, critique, and community together. Leah and I are going to talk about her journey to finding comedy, from open mic stages and apartment shows to peer support groups for grief to editing and creating an everyday life. Leah is going to help us understand how humor and creativity are outlets that serve as vital ways of responding to reality. All right, everyone. So this is a special one because someone who's normally, let's just say, behind the scenes gets to be forefront in this one. And I've wanted our friend Leah to be part of the conversation for a very long time. You probably hear Leah's name at the end credits when I'm saying this is edited by, but now, I mean, we're just making more work for Leah because she's going to have to edit this later. But Leah Kramer, welcome. So excited to spend time with you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. It's such a treat to be able to be on a podcast that you edit. I'm like, this is really cool.
Yes, I think it's so fun, and I think it's been such a joy to be able to know you for the last few years because you are, I mean, in very Gen Z fashion, you just reached out and you're like, "Hey, do you need an editor?" And I said, "Hey, yes, I do." And you've been along for the ride, and I joke you're my biggest fan. You listen to every episode, but that's
I
also because
do.
I pay you to do it.
And I love the podcast and I share it with friends and they all are like, wait, this is really awesome.
I'm glad to hear that. It makes me feel good that the youth think that it's awesome. I think when I got into this podcast, like I was like, this is for the olds who need to know the youngs. And then I realized there's a lot of youngs that are trying to figure it out in life. And so they're tuning in. And that's something we learned when we did a little bit of our audience demographics. So we're trying to speak a little bit more to Gen Z. We're just all figuring it out together, you know?
Yeah. And I also, listening to it is, I get so inspired and very, very moved by how passionate and how hardworking people in my age group are. And it's so cool to hear about people's professional trajectories and how they're thinking outside of the box. And I think that's such a Gen Z thing, is just being like, I'm just going to do it. And
Yes.
it's cool to hear other people truly doing it and hearing what is possible. I really enjoy it.
Good. That was not what we brought you on. We didn't not bring you on
That's
here
true.
for a
That
30
was
minute,
not scripted.
not scripted, but I do appreciate that. Yeah, there's times when I like talk with Gen Z and I'd be like, you're the most terrifying 25-year-old I've ever met in my life because you're just so ambitious. But then they are also amazing. So people that are scared of Gen Z, I'm like, you should be, but they're amazing because they're just so tenacious. But Leah, we have been lucky to have you be a part of the editing of this. And, you know, again, I joke you are a fangirl, but like you are doing so much more than just editing a podcast. And so let me know, I know your story, but that's why I had you on, because I want people to hear about your story. Who are you? What is your role? And I mean, I joke, like, I know the journey of how you ended up with me, but there's so much that you bring into the world outside of editing a podcast. And you really are a multi hyphenate. But tell the listeners who this Leah Kramer is from behind the scenes.
Okay, so my name is Leah Kramer. I am originally from Buffalo, New York. I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I live in Brooklyn now, and I I definitely identify with the Gen Z tenacity and ambition. I feel like that has been such in like my compass of who I am. I do feel like those are some key players. I think of myself as an extracurricular queen. I love to do projects on the side. I also run a grief group in New York called Hot People Grieving, and it's a grief group for young people who are experiencing an intimate loss of any kind. I myself lost my mom 3.5 years ago, and it has been just such a beautiful thing to connect with other people who are in my stage of life, Gen Zers, and talk about what grief it means to us right now and to connect with each other. And it's been really, really awesome. And I also do comedy in New York, which is something that I'll be talking about today. And I just love community. I love people. I just think that there's so much to do and to see, and I just want to do and see it all. I also like to read and run. I um yeah, and I also edit podcasts. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing a lot. I also edit
But that's why
podcasts.
you and I like to hang out.
This is why we like to hang out. No, seriously. And the
Yeah, we both
podcast
are
thing,
like, take a break.
no, and I'm like, breaks? I actually don't know about that stuff.
What?
But
Never
I
heard of
started editing,
her. What's a break?
never heard of her. I started editing podcasts in college because I studied journalism and I really love audio storytelling. And I just love people's voices. I love the expression of it. I love podcasts also. I just have always listened to podcasts. And as Megan said, I literally just emailed her and I was like, hey, you want an editor? Because I was like, worst thing someone can tell me is no. I think that either is a Gen Z thing or maybe it's just going through grief kind of thing where I was like, the worst thing someone can tell me is no. And that's fine. If I am fine with them saying no, then I'm also fine asking. So I reached out. It worked out so beautifully. And there have been other podcasts that I've been editing, but this one's my bread and butter. And
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
it's a fun side hustle, and I love learning. I love connecting with people. It's like so cool. It's amazing that we like have truly been working together for now like over 2 years, and that that it's just amazing. Like it's just so cool. Um,
It is. It's so fun. And like I think about how I think you and I get along because it's true. You're like, and I'm running a marathon and I edit podcasts and I do this. And it's like, you're not doing it braggadociously, but I think it's like totally Gen Z to be like, I have like 14 things that I'm deeply passionate about and that's okay. And some people are like, but why can't they just focus on one or two? And you're like, let them live their lives. Right. And people for a long time were very confused about my work because it's like not just generations, it's not just higher education. And like it took me a really long time to figure out like what it is that I do because like I'm pulled in so many different areas because I'm passionate about lots of things and that's okay. And I'm glad that you are multi-passionate because you're one really fun to follow on social media. and very funny. People need to follow you. But I think that you bring so many different angles to life, and that's like so great. So we could talk about so many things. You're running your grief group, which I think is amazing. And I do want to make sure we touch on that because I think what you're doing is so important there. But let's get into the comedy side of it, because I think, if I could be wrong, everyone likes to laugh, right? Like everyone enjoys a chuckle. Most people do. It feels good. So let's talk specifically about comedy and comedy as a medium, right? Because I think I love to follow comedians, you being one of them. But there's so much, like, there's actually like study behind comedy and like what it does for us. And everyone thinks they can just like hop up on the microphone and be like, let me just riff. And there's so much more to it than that, right? You can be funny, but a comedian is a whole different thing. And you are like my real life Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So what draws you to comedy as a medium, especially as a Gen Zer and navigating the world right now? Because the world is something spicy. So, talk to me about that. How did you get into it, and how's it helping you as a Gen Zer in this chaos?
Yeah. Well, it would be remiss for me not to begin this tale, sharing how I was a devout theater kid. So performing, being on stage, that was something I wanted since I was like 2. Like I was always like singing for my brothers and my parents and making up songs and just performing, and they were like, "Can she be quiet?" And I was like, "Nope." So I've always loved performing. I've always loved art and like performance art. And since I was young, I always gravitated towards like character roles, like funny roles, because I just like loved making people laugh, but also I liked the challenge of getting people to laugh. I thought that that was so fun and so exhilarating, and what a payoff, because when you do it right, it's this like warmth and this energy, and it's so positive and just lovely. And I just really 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 loved that. And I also, it's like, it's so hard to even explain. It's like my whole life I've just always gravitated towards comedy. Like I was on Twitter in like 2011. I think that Twitter honestly has made a fundamental impact on Gen Z humor, because it's this
Yes.
throwaway, very loosely edited way of communicating ideas, which I think has really
Mhm.
shaped our sense of humor. And I think
Mhm.
that also
Mhm.
is like, think about like ambition and whatever. It's like we will put out thoughts and ideas into the world that are so like untouched, because we're just like, whatever, we'll see. We'll throw a bunch of things at the wall and see what sticks. And that
Yeah.
is Twitter for a lot of us. Was like that. Was like that. It was like you didn't really edit. You only had a short amount of characters. You could post as much as you wanted, and um, but I've always just like, yeah, I've always just like loved jokes and laughter, and the similar to how people gravitate towards dance as a form of expression. It's like I gravitate towards like comedy and humor as a form of expression. And I've
Absolutely.
always looked up to women in comedy, because I just think that they're so amazing and smart, and the way that they critique the world invites you in but also kind of like calls you out, which is the most powerful way to do it, I think. And I just remember when I moved to New York, I was like, I need to do stand up at least once. I just have to try it. And it took me a while to finally do it, because it was very scary. And then I just started going to open mics and forcing myself to go to open mics. And I was so bad at the beginning. I was so bad because I didn't know how to, I didn't know how to perform. You have to monologue for so
Mhm.
long,
Mhm.
and you have to keep the attention. You have to, you have to be up there by yourself. You have to communicate your ideas in a way that makes people understand but not give things away too quickly. You have to be charismatic, you have to deliver it well. It's such an art, and I loved that trajectory. And I remember like as I got better, like the payoff was so wonderful. And I also just, I just like I love being on stage. I love performing. There's something that I learn about myself every single time that I perform. I feel like I there's some psychological thing that when I am performing in front of a group of people, um, it's I'm able to like enter this part of my psyche that feels so true and feels very good. And I think anyone would say that, like, it with dancing or with maybe with painting or with singing. It's like you're you're able to enter this version of yourself that is able to communicate in a very like specific way.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's been comedy and humor, and it's just been I feel like it's made an impact in every single part of my life. You know, the way I relate to my family, the way I relate to myself and my friends and my work, because that is the way I express myself. So learning about that the last because I've only been doing comedy like 2 years now. Um, I've just like with any art form, like it opens up who you are and it allows you to enter different
I
parts
love
of
that.
yourself. Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you found that, because I think that um, that kind of gets into the Gen Z of it. And maybe it's not formal comedy, because like as we've talked about, that is not just hopping up there with a microphone, as you pointed out, right? But the element of an art form, right, can help us navigate tough things. It can help us understand things that feel bigger and larger than us. And as you pointed out, like critique things, which is important. How do you think Gen Z uses humor in formal settings like comedy, or even online, or just on riffing on Twitter/X/ whatever we're doing these days? How do you think Gen Z is using humor to make sense of things that are complicated or even painful?
I think that Gen Z uses humor honestly the same way probably most generations use humor. I don't know if it's necessarily super different. I think that the distinct difference in the Gen Z humor is our ability to share quickly with each other. And I think that we see that in social media. And I think that memes and videos that circulate quickly, there are these like ways of like talking about our world, and we can easily share it with each other, and it creates this unity. So I think that like we use humor as this way of unifying ourselves, and I think that is like such a privilege of being in Gen Z, is that we grew up with we were able to be in group chats. Like I'm on like the older end of Gen Z, but like I had an iPhone when I was like a sophomore in high school, so I was able to be in like group chats with friends and like text friends since that time. And like, of course, group chats existed outside of things, but like we could carry the iPhone with us. We didn't have to like log on to the computer. And, you know, TikTok and Instagram and like, Tumblr, just all of these like things where we're able to like take our humor and unite each other. So I feel like that's how Gen Z uses humor. I think people have been using humor the same way forever. I think that like if you look, I mean, I just saw Shakespeare in the Park, and that is, Shakespeare is not a Gen Zer, but the humor that he has is like the way he critiques the world is something we all relate to. Um, so I think it's like more like the mediums that we have access to. And I think that also because Gen Z has an informality to it, we have this like, whatever, like the world's gonna end, we're just gonna like do our thing. I think that we are also probably more open to making jokes and making jokes about the truth, just because that is like what we've always been forced to reckon with, which is like there's actually so much
Mhm.
bad, and we're not even going to pretend that it's okay.
That's a little bit related to my next question too, of like, are we seeing from a Gen Z lens, like comedy is more of a coping mechanism, a form of resistance, or just like a natural way of expressing truth? And I want to get into that, but I do think, from what you just said to me, yes, like I think comedy has always been elements of that, or humor has always been like laughing at the thing that is sadly very true, right? Like we laugh at the things that feel very true. and we're like, the irony, right? Like that's so funny, or the commentary of the truth is so funny, that we have to laugh about it. Or it is just slapstick comedy and like someone fell down, and like that can also be funny. But I do think that because, to your point, like Gen Z is online, so they're able to share the truth and the critique on the truth, or the reality is, like, sometimes I feel like we are that meme of the dog sitting with like all the fire around him, and you're like, this is fine. And like Gen Z is like, that's what it feels like, and we're like, this is fine, but let's also make a joke about it. And it's I think it is the informality. It's, I think what I call, like, it's the nihilistic view that Gen Z has. Like, y'all, baby girl, like this world could be over tomorrow. Let's at least have a good time. Let's not like make it more serious than it needs to be, but also like let's not forget to like critique what's problematic, right? And I think that that's very Gen Z of it all. And I do think that Gen Z's humor has a flair of like feminine, like more of a girl women's style of critiquing the world. Would you disagree? Like, I think the things that are uniquely funny that Gen Z has started, I think have come from young women personally.
I think even more than women, I would say the queer community has like absolutely dominated Gen Z humor.
No, I think you're completely correct. And I think that I hadn't looked at it, but I think you are spot on that so much of like, I think what's coming out comedy on social media, what's coming out with young comedians is very driven by like women and people in the LGBT community. It's like the girls and the gays are carrying this for us. And that kind of also feels like society these days. That no shade, no shade to the boys, but there is this piece of it where I'm kind of like, the world is getting funnier when we let more people in, and because we get to hear their experiences and speaking their truth. And like, you don't have to have the same identity as maybe the gay man that's on stage, but he's sharing his truth with you, and you're able to say, oh, that's funny. I didn't live it, but it's funny. And I love that. Okay, I want to talk about crush comedy, right? This amazing thing that you're like, I'm 2 years into comedy, very Gen Z of you. You're like, I'm going to just create something. I'm going to go do it. You little overachiever, give yourself a break. But crush comedy has this unique vibe. One, I want you to tell me a little bit about it. And then what kinds of stories or bits are you being drawn to and performing and writing through crush comedy?
Yeah. So Crush Comedy is a show that I started with one of my besties, Eve Wallach. She's awesome. We met at an open mic, and in also typical Gen Z fashion, like 2 months after we started becoming friends, we were like, let's put on a comedy show. And then our friendship has grown with the show, and it's just been it's been very special and really beautiful. So it's called Crush Comedy. It's all about having a crush or crushing it, or life is crushing you. There's a lot of different ways to interpret. It's in an apartment, which is a very cool energy, very house party. It's bring your own bev, whatever you want that to be. And we have the same structure every time. We have 4 comedians, and they each perform like a little under 10 minutes. And then Eve and I host. We also do a set, and we have fun bits that we do every time, mostly about crushing and having a crush on somebody or something. You can have a crush on something, like your coffee. The show began in December of 2023, so we're just coming on about 2 years. We've done 10 shows. We do them about every other month, and we love it. It's so fun. We can fit about 70 plus ish people into the apartment. And, we just want it to be a show where there's a lot of laughter and love. And I really pride myself on a lot of people come to the show because they want to support me or Eve or a friend who's in it. And they're like, I usually don't really like comedy, but I loved this show. And I'm like, yes, comedy can be really fun. And it's supposed to be really fun. And yeah, we're excited to see where it goes, and future projects that we do either individually or together. But it's been really special, and it's been such an amazing thing to be able to also share with friends and with family, and with people that we admire.
I love it. My biggest regret is that I don't live closer, so I could come to every show and be your like momager, stage manager. But I think it's amazing that you're like, I just started this, and now I'm gonna host my own show. And some people be like, oh, but only 70 people are going. I was like, I can't even get like 7 people to come to a dinner. So like 70 people, it's a lot of people. That's like 69 more people than are willing to listen to me ramble and talk about things. So like you're doing something right there. Um I think it's great that you're doing it. I love a theme, I love a structure, I love a play on words. So I think that this is great. If you're in the New York area, please follow Leah so you can go to her next show and send me pictures, and then I'll be jealous. Because look at her, she's doing big things, y'all. But you are what I love about you is, one, you smile all the time. Like you're always smiling. But like let's also not talk about the fact that like you've been through some stuff, right? Like you have health stuff. Your beautiful mother passed away. Like you're honoring her in so many wonderful ways. And like I appreciate that you use both comedy and your creative expression. This is me giving a compliment, not really asking a question. I guess to pull other people into your experience. Um, and not that you're like, I don't let the bad stuff get me down, but I love that you are channeling the hard stuff into connection. And as we kind of segue into kind of my next conversation, and it's a little bit of Gen Z, but I think your experiences is really such a good example of that, is the way that creative outlets are so necessary for young people, especially in Gen Z when we're thinking about burnout, overstimulation, going through adversity, loss, grief, like those really hard things that sometimes people are like, that could shut me down, right? So tell me a little bit about creative outlets and how that's like comedy has helped you and your peers.
Yeah. I think that creative outlets help us because we're just able to take the things that we're feeling inside and put them somewhere that is not inside. And that just makes it easier to handle. And those things will always exist within you, but when they exist within you and you can't let them out, that's when you maybe start shutting down, or it's just more difficult to, regulate your energy or regulate your moods. I think that this is such a reflection of all of Gen Z's therapy. Also, like, we love going to therapy and we're very vocal about it. And just the idea of putting of being okay with how you're feeling and then putting those feelings somewhere else is just so healthy. And it's not a fix. Nothing's a fix. Like when you're feeling like, like going through grief is, when I do comedy, I'm not fixing this pain that I have, but it's putting the pain somewhere that's not just inside, and then it makes it just, just like if you're holding a bunch of items and you put one item down on your desk, you're holding less items. Doesn't mean the item doesn't still belong to you, but like you get to walk and it's a little lighter. And I think that that's something that we're doing all the time. And I also think that, harkening back to community and the importance of that, I think that because of the pivotal time that Gen Z went through COVID, like COVID hit when I was a junior in college. So basically, like, most of my college experience felt like it was taken away because of COVID. And all of those years I was supposed to be with people, and we were older upperclassmen. We knew what we wanted to do, and we were taking classes that were more interesting. We didn't have any of that. So I think that we are sprinting towards community. And we had so much time to process how we were feeling. And we already were given like the okay from our peers and from yourselves to like have whatever feelings we're feeling. So now you're seeing us a few years after the pandemic, kind of bringing these two things together, of being like, I am going to feel all of these things, and also I desperately need community. I don't know if you've seen these things online, but there are all these, well, last year there were all the like lookalike contests. This year there's like performative male contests where people will be like, like they're like these girls and they're like um being performative feminist men, and all these people are watching them in this like big, you know circle, and the caption's like, people yearn for the town hall. It's like we're like, because we were so deprived of it, it's like we are like frothing at the mouth for being together and experiencing things together, because we had to experiencing things alone for so long. And I think that we also developed, maybe it's like we also developed a lot of hobbies over COVID. So we all were like, we don't want to stop doing those hobbies.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just, it's so healthy to look inward and say, I'm having these feelings and that's totally fine. And I'm just going to share them with someone. I'm going to write about them. I'm going to draw a little. And then suddenly you're like, okay, cool. I've worked through that, and now I can move forward.
I have so many things to say about that. First, that was free therapy for anyone that hasn't paid their therapist. You just got it for free today from Leah. The idea of like sometimes we do need a hobby, a thing, a creative expression, even if we're like terrible at it, to release the bad thing. And like I love the concept of like we put it on, like we just set it down for a second. We don't have to carry it with us, but doesn't mean it goes away. And I think that that is such a mature way to look at things, and I'd never really thought about it. So thank you for saving my life today. But also, I never really thought about, so this idea of, I mean, I know that COVID impacted Gen Z in like so many ways that were different than previous generations. I write about it, I talk about it all the time. But the pandemic really occurring for people your age, when like your brain is wired to be, let me tell you what's going on. Your brain was wired to be developing two things at once: autonomy and connection with others. And so y'all had more than enough time by yourselves to figure out autonomy and independence and loneliness and like figuring out the world. But you also need relationships to others. And so it's like most other generations develop those things in concurrence. So like you develop your emotional regulation for yourself and with others in concurrence of like relationships in an ongoing capacity. So like in a typical world, right, you're doing that through college every single day with your peers. But when the world shuts down and you take all the peer elements out of it, you only had yourself and maybe your family to do that with. And so now we're seeing Gen Z kind of in this self-inflicted catch up of like, we have a billion hobbies, and now we need, as you said, we're yearning for the town hall. I'm obsessed with that. Thank you. They are. And that's why I think we're seeing so much come up in this season around like Gen Z is gathering at very high rates, but they're doing it with intention and ferocity. Because to, I think, really lock in that developmental step that humans have to feel healthy, to be able to move on in their life, we have to be able to have autonomy in our own world, but we also have to know how to like connect with others. And instead of doing that in an everyday cyclical fashion, there was a big pause. And so now Gen Z is catching up because they're like, we have to be able to do both of those things. Like we can't be good at one and not the other. And so like pat on the back for Gen Z for no one, I don't know if everyone got together and like had a conversation about it. They're like, hey team, get it together. Or if you are just all collectively influencing one another to say, we need to be better at this. But the consciousness of getting together with meeting, I think, is just so important. And I want to thank you for pointing that out. Like you're flocking to the fun because this world is on fire, and at least let's have some fun, right?
Community and intentional community is like the most healing and grounding thing that has gotten me through like all of the like really just like the grief and like it's, and I think that's why this isn't about the comedy, and I just don't think this would like be like incongruent with what, but just I so agree. And like the grief group, like we make sure it's in person because like people need like to feel other people around them, and they need to go to a space with intentionality and put, that's like a big part of grief group is like it's an hour and a half, that's it. People know when it starts and they know when it ends, and there's so much like, I find at least, and I see it in the people who come, it's so effective to know that, okay, I'm going to this other space. It's not in my house. It's not on my computer. I'm putting my grief there, and then I can leave that room. And it's for this hour and a half once a month.
I think that that's an amazing thing. And again, I'm just jealous. I don't want to live in New York City, but because I love the South, but like you're doing such cool things to bring your peers together, and it makes someone just come in and hang out with y'all for like laughing and being sad together. Like, what a beautiful dichotomy of those things, right? Like, you're laughing together and you're being sad together. And I think that's amazing. So, Leah, I have two more questions for you. You and I really could sit, like, I say this to a lot of guests, you know that. You're like, Megan, you say the same thing to everyone. But I really do think you and I could talk about this for a long time, because there's so many interesting facets to how you approach life. I will say that. You're one of the coolest people I know. But you've learned a lot, right? So you edit podcasts, you have your own creative work, from creating a grief group for your peers, which is amazing, to developing comedy shows, to all the other amazing things you do, including your work, which we never really touched on. You're doing great work for advocacy for children in New York City, so like casual stuff. But what's something you've learned through all of this about Gen Z that you think other generations need to understand and they aren't really getting it yet? Me. No, I'm kidding. What are older generations just not getting about Gen Z that you're seeing from a different angle?
Gen Z looked at Nike and said, yeah, just do it. Like,
I'm dying. But yes, you're correct.
That's kind of like our thesis statement. Like, just do it. There could be a pandemic. The world could start burning and you can't run outside because there's too much smoke. Go to Australia before the fires wipe out these beautiful places. We see so much spontaneous destruction that we're kind of like, all right, Nike, just do it. And I think that that's something that Gen Z can teach other generations, of just like the joy of just doing something and learning as you go, and not feeling like you have to be perfect when you start it, because you're not going to be. And the most effective way to get better at something is to just do it. And so I think that's what I would say is like, what I've learned is like, Gen Z, we just do it. And we, like everyone in the world, like, we're smart and we're capable and whatever, but our approach to something is like, we just do it. We do first, we edit later. And we publish first, we edit later. That's kind of like our vibe.
But I also think that there's this element of, and this is potentially just some of the growing up of it all, of Gen Z. Yeah, they just do it. They just send the email to some lady and say, hey, can I edit your podcast? Right? Like, they do that. And that feels really abrasive to older generations. Like, to me, I was like, hell yeah, thank you. I need this help. Thank you for seeing a problem and fixing it, Gen Z. That's what I love about Gen Z, is they're like, this ain't right. We're going to step in and try to do something about it. And they're not waiting around. And that is truly, I think, really, really important. But I think there's also, on the flip side of it, we can't not point out that like many Gen Z are like, should I do this? Should I do this? And like, there's a little bit of anxiety as well, where sometimes they do feel a little like paralysis by analysis of, I'm going to do this. Am I going to do this? Can I do this? Am I going to do it right? And that's a very normal thing, but I think they're naming that feeling a lot louder than previous generations. And they do eventually do it, but they're like, hey, I'm feeling really anxious about it. And so I think it's like catching older generations off guard, of like, the generation wants to do these things. They're saying they want to do it. They're going to do it, but they're also going through the natural, anxiety cycles, I would say, or the stress cycles of being a young adult, figuring it out, being a teenager, figuring it out, but also having way more language to saying like, I'm anxious about this. I don't know what I'm doing. I need mentorship. I need help. They have the language that prior generations didn't have, and like, no shade to older generations, but we just kind of like silently suffered. And we were just like, the circus music was playing in our head, and we're like, I can't do this. And so I think you're correct. Gen Z is just going to do it. Shout out to Nike for a brand that transcends generations and decades. They are going to do it, but they're also going to talk about it.
Yeah, that is such a big, I mean, look at social media. Social media is like, hey, here's a platform where you can share everything you think the second you think it. And that has shaped a generation that talks about what they're thinking a lot and thinks what they're thinking is really important. And sometimes that can be annoying, of course, but I think it has made us very introspective. And there's benefit to it. Like if you look on TikTok, it's like everything is like the blah 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 theory. It's like the 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 red nail theory. If you have red nails, then boys will think you're better. And it's like, not everything has to be a theory, but sometimes they're gonna hit something gold.
That's true. That we're really I'm not on TikTok, but those things make their way to the old people's internet on Instagram like a week or two later. And I was like, so no offense to Gen Z, I was like, so we're learning that red is a power color. Is
Right.
that what we're doing? Right?
Like
Like
the
if you
red
wear
nail
red
theory. It's like,
if you wear red
no, it's like
lipstick or you have red nails, like all you're doing is attracting attention. I was like, that's why every fast food has red in their logo. Like
yeah.
it's because it is attractive. So I love that. Keep me up to date on the theories that I'm going to hear about in 2 weeks. It's always helpful for me, Leah. But sadly, it's time to go. And we could sit and talk about like your favorite things about Gen Z, but I think we have, and I really appreciate you coming in. You are one of my my go-to Gen Z to be like, is this cool, or am I onto something here? And I do appreciate that. But Leah, you are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure people want to keep up with your comedy. I do love your little poems; they do make me chuckle. By the way, that you share, I do read them, and I don't read poetry at all, but I will read yours. Where can people follow along with the great work that you're doing? I know Instagram is a place for you, but say they are in New York and they're able to catch a show or stop by a grief group. Where can people find the many great things you're doing for others and bringing people together?
Yeah. Please feel free to follow me on Instagram. My personal Instagram is at LJKray, LJKRAY. From there, you will be able to find information about the grief group. I have a post that's pinned, and I also have my comedy show in my bio, Crush Comedy, one word, 2 Y's at the end of comedy. So feel free to follow us on there. And if you want to speak professionally about what I do, or if you just want to connect, LinkedIn is also a wonderful resource. So you can add me on LinkedIn, just Leah Kramer in New York City.
Well, Leah, thank you again. This was so insightful, so deep, also so fun and so funny. So that's why we had you on. But thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Megan. Thanks for having me.
As we close out this episode, I want to touch on some really meaningful insights that Leah brought to this conversation, because her voice isn't just smart and funny, but it's also deeply human. First, comedy is a way to process and not just perform. Leah helped us see that humor isn't always about deflection. Sometimes it's about acknowledging the mess and making it feel a little lighter. For Gen Z, comedy is often the clearest way to speak truth and connect with others, especially when the world feels upside down. Next, our hobbies can be healing, even when you're not great at them. As we heard here and in other episodes, Gen Z is leaning into creative expression for clarity and opportunities for reflection and reset. You don't have to be amazing at something for it to matter to you. The act of creating, just for the joy of it, is a kind of emotional release. Also, community doesn't have to be complicated. Whether through her comedy show or her grief group, Leah shows us that thoughtful gathering, even in a living room over a shared feeling, can be just as meaningful as something formal or polished. It's really the intention that counts. And of course, Gen Z isn't waiting for permission. From cold emailing me to ask if I needed an editor, to launching her own comedy show, Leah's a part of a generation that's doing it scared, doing it imperfectly, but doing it anyways. It's the mix of tenacity and transparency that makes space for new kinds of creativity and leadership. So, Leah, thank you for reminding us that laughter and vulnerability can and should live in the same space. And to our listeners, I hope you're walking away with a refreshing perspective, maybe a few laughs, and a little more grace for you to show up in your own life. If you want to follow with Leah's work, you can find her on Instagram at LJKRay. That's LJKRAY. From there, you can also find links to Crush Comedy, the show that she co-hosts and produces in New York, as well as info on Hot People Grieving, her peer-led grief support group. And if you're looking to professionally connect with Leah, you can find her on LinkedIn, and you can just search Leah Kramer in New York City. Now we'd love to hear about it from you. What stuck with you, and what will you keep thinking about after this episode's end? You can share about it in Spotify listener comment section, or you can follow, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcast. It really does help more people find these conversations. We have had a blast this season, but we only have a few more episodes left. However, we're going to be planning for the next season before you know it. So we'll be looking for timely topics and insightful guests to feature. If you have a suggestion, you can share your thoughts using the form on my website. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Meghan and Grace. We can keep the conversation going there. And as you know, I couldn't do this show without the Gen Z team behind the scenes who bring these episodes to life. This episode was produced by Callie Waters and edited by Leah Kramer. Thank you again for stopping by. Let's continue this conversation, and we'll chat soon.